Welcome to Out of the Classroom, a new series that outlines the implementation of education here at the Center for Homeland Defense and Security. With me today is Ryan Monaghan, Lieutenant with San Mateo Police Department. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Heather.
So you took a class here, and usually we talk about the theses that are implemented, but this is where a class paper, a class project was implemented in your department.
Yeah.
Talk about how that came about.
So the class in particular was called Strategic Planning. And we were learning about the lean startup model, really, which is a model that's applied by a lot of tech companies. And the reason why they apply this model is oftentimes they are introducing technology that's so new that they're still in the process of really kind of figuring out what it looks like. So using a normal business model just doesn't really apply. And I will be honest, when I first got into the course and started learning about this, I think a lot of the questions from myself and my cohort mates were, okay, how does this apply to what we do? And where's the nexus? And slowly but surely throughout the coursework, you realize that there is a nexus. And basically how this came to be for me was I had a project that I had been working on for probably the last year. It's just been kind of, as many things in the public sector, we often are reprioritizing things continuously. And this was one of those things in the parking lot. It was part of our strategic plan. It was something that our chief and our command staff all agreed upon as something that we just wanted to improve upon. And what that was is we had what's known as a terrorism liaison officer program, which is really a program that connects people with public safety and the fusion centers and private sector to make sure that we're really doing our best to detect and deter and respond to and then mitigate disasters. Mm-hmm. And it's really evolved, it's not just about terrorism anymore. It's evolved into really an all hazards approach. And we wanted to build this model out. And it was just this project that was kind of sitting in the parking lot. And here was this class. And what I realized really quickly is a lot of what we were learning was project management. And it was a different framework for project management. And it was a way to get an idea or a concept out and start working on it before actually really rolling the final product out.
So as you work your way up the chain of command in public safety, a lot of times you're not given any lessons. You're just left to your own devices and talents as to whether you're good at it or not in terms of project management. So how did that work for you?
And that's so true, Heather. I can tell you that I've never really had any kind of formalized training other than just recently in our agency. I will say that we're fairly progressive. We have a fairly progressive chief who is a big advocator for this type of different training, but it is not something that we normally get in our profession. And so oftentimes we're put in charge of projects and you're kind of left to your own defenses to figure your way out. And so for this course, what I liked about it was a more flexible framework. And I knew I had this project and I had to do a project for the class. And I know that one of the big stressors, especially in this program, is really using what we're learning to apply to real life situations that we're dealing with at work. And I thought, even though this isn't really an innovation or a technology project, so to speak, it is a project nonetheless that's kind of been sitting in purgatory, and I'd like to push forward on it.
And I just find that actually the most interesting part, because every agency has a parking lot of ideas and things that are important but maybe not critical. And you guys are always, reacting and moving forward with the disaster of the day. So reaching back and getting to the parking lot. So there you were in the parking lot, and then you put it into kind of a action mode.
Put it in action, yeah.
But then what were the barriers? Or did you encounter any kind of barriers that other folks can learn from?
Yeah,
as you move forward.
Yeah, I think so, because the idea that I use is something, again, that's used very much in the tech world. And the idea is to take this idea, find some folks within my agency that had some level of understanding or expertise in the whole concept of terrorism liaison officer. And for this new program, what we wanted to do was call it a fusion liaison officer program. Same basic principle, but really, the idea is making sure that we're communicating well with our Fusion Center, which is the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center. And it's not just because for sharing critical information, which is vital, but there's also a plethora of resources and training absolutely relevant to Homeland Security and that all hazards preparedness approach that the NCRIC provides. And so a lot of it, what we realize is it's there, but no one knows about it because there really is no one that's interfacing regularly with the Fusion Center, or not enough people. And so we wanted to bring in our partners in the fire department. And we said, hey, we want this to be an all-encompassing, if it's going to be all hazards, we need all the public safety professionals. The first barrier I would say is, we were working with another agency. And so that took some time because at the time that I first kind of introduced this idea, which was before I even entered this coursework, the fire was going through a transition, our fire department, where they were an agency that was controlling that was one agency, but it had oversight over 3 different cities, and they were in the process of merging into one consolidated agency. So we had to, that was kind of the priority, to let that consolidation take place. Once that happened, then that kind of barrier was out of the way, and it opened the door to push this idea forward. The next barrier, if anything, is you're introducing a new way of doing business. And what I had suggested using what I learned in class was, hey, rather than do this the old way and spend several months figuring out the policies and procedures and all those things that come up, oftentimes only to later go back and revise it all, because once theory gets into practice, you oftentimes realize that you have to tweak things. I said, why don't we test it? One of the things we learned in the class was this idea of prototyping. Again, something usually used for technology, but that can be applied to a concept, and the instructors made that very clear. You can apply this to concepts as well. So we said, why don't we prototype a Fusion Center liaison officer program with the fire department, start rolling it out to our people in both agencies, start getting some feedback, and then from the feedback that we get, we can then form the actual program itself. And we'll see how much interest there is in this type of program, because it has to bring not only value internally to the organization, it has to bring value to the community, but it has to start from within. That's where I thought the real wins were for us, is to kind of get that idea out. But again, for a lot of folks in the public sector, that's a different way of doing business, especially for us when there's a lot of liability in what we do. And they go, geez, you got to have the policies and procedures and all these things in place. In actuality, we do already have certain policies and procedures in place that would translate into this, or that we could use. And it allowed for us to get the idea out there and actually get feedback, so that when we do form the policies, procedures, and the team, we've got the most robust amount of information to really do it the right way.
And it saves a lot of time.
It saves a ton of time. And the other thing on the plus side that I saw is, there, as you know, in public sector, and it's not intentional, there's so many times that we have a project or an idea that we're really excited about, but as you alluded to, there's emergencies that come up, and there's other things that distract from that. Well, you also lose support sometimes from the line level, right? Because they're hearing about a project, but they're not seeing it.
Yes.
So the idea of prototyping is a way to get it out there, get them involved, get some buy-in from the stakeholders, and have people actually see something and know that you're actually working on something, and at the same time you're slowly but surely getting feedback. But it's such a new thing that even getting the feedback from the officers, it's not something that they're used to, at least in this way.
Right. So you're actually pioneering a whole new way of doing business at the departments as well. So.
Absolutely.
And having a progressive chief and city manager, having all of those folks, advocating for you in education, but also in practice, is a secret sauce.
It's the secret sauce. I mean, it even extends out to city council. I mean, we're just very fortunate that we've got that kind of support. Our city council, our city manager, our chief of police, they realize that the times we're living in are changing rapidly. And
we have to be dynamic.
We've got to be ready for it, and we've got to be flexible, and we've got to evolve. And I know that one thing that this project was able to allow me to do is one of the things that a lot of our leaders talk about, and a lot of things you learn in leadership, and it's something I know my chief of police preaches, is you've got to get buy-in from the stakeholders. You've got to get them involved in the process in order for the process to be successful. Well, this method, this lean startup method, believe it or not, is a way to get that. It's a way to actually turn that into fruition and get that robust input about anything, whether it be technology or a concept.
Talk to me about what you see going forward. Have you implemented this? It's working, and it's off to the races, or?
Well, I would say that we're definitely in the race, and we've definitely got it rolled out. We're still kind of in the phase of collecting feedback. But the nice part is that what we've realized is there's enough support from both agencies, from the leadership down to the line level, of people that are like, yeah, this is an interesting concept, and there are folks that are interested in being part of this. And so that's half the battle won, is we know that we have people that want to push this forward, that are willing to own this. And that's what's so critical for the exchange of information and for this type of program. You can't have half buy-in. You got to have people that are really committed to this, that are really interested in it. And it also creates some career enhancement opportunities for our personnel. It's another thing that they can do. It's another thing that they can learn. It's another way they can be better at what they do every day. And so we've got that part of it done. And I think, our goal is by June to really kind of have this thing solidified and start writing out policy and procedure and roll this out. And what's really exciting is, in talking to our Fusion Center, they were just ecstatic that we're doing this, that we're really kind of formalizing this process. A lot of other agencies do it, but we're formalizing this process, and we see this extending out to even other agencies in our area, because we do work so well with the agencies that surround us, of maybe just expanding this program out even beyond the city boundary, the confines of San Mateo and the cities that the San Mateo Fire Department services, which is Foster City, San Mateo, and Belmont. So we also want to reach out to those police agencies at some point, once we kind of get this concept down, and get their participation.
I was going to ask about what you would advise other agencies that see. I mean, you're a mid-size agency.
Yes.
Around a whole bunch of smaller to mid-size agencies. I mean, they're over 50 in the area?
We have 16 different cities, actually, or 16 different agencies in our city. I think there's 23 cities total in the county of San Mateo. There's a lot of cities. Huge in the Bay Area. Yeah, and it's governed by, you have 16 different law enforcement agencies. So
how would you advise somebody who looks at it and says, God, I wish I could do this in my agency? I may or may not have buy-in from the stakeholders. What kind of advice would you give them to try to work on this?
Yeah, I would say the first step is really kind of taking that principle of getting the idea out there. So it's really important to find the right ambassadors you have in your department. In every agency, you're going to have folks that have interests and strengths, and it's reaching out to those folks and having them be part of your prototype team, if you will, to get the concept or idea out there. And you want to get a very good cross-section of people within your agency, people from your leadership team, from your command staffs, people from the line level, and in many cases, people even outside in the law enforcement role, maybe people outside of sworn positions, people in some of the professional staff positions throughout the organization. You want as much of that rich feedback as possible. And by using these different people on that prototype committee, whether it's them in a public forum trying to get feedback, or even just having lunch with somebody and saying, hey, here's this new concept with a few people, what do you think about it?
Right.
I find that's how you really get in and get some of that really good, robust input that you wouldn't normally get if you didn't have those ambassadors out there.
Excellent. I love the fact that you can use this framework not just for technology, but for concepts and projects. And I think that's of more use to our Homeland Security community, many of whom are just like you, who, hey, this is something, this is my idea. Now I have a framework in which to implement it. Yeah. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.